Hey everybody, this is Spoonie, and Dark and Darker is an awesome game. This is a hardcore PvPvE game where you will enter a dungeon either solo or with one or two friends. You will traverse the dungeon's various rooms, avoiding traps, defeating various ghouls and goblins, and looting treasures along the way. You will start out with a very rough set of gear, and as you make your way from room to room, you will find new, often better gear to equip. You will also find potions and treasures, shrines that will heal you, protect you, resurrect fallen friends, along with several other buffs and benefits. But you'll need to be careful, because you're not the only players in the dungeon. And while I have only ever run into a few other people, I have often heard them opening doors and chests or fighting baddies off somewhere in the distance. This has allowed me to avoid them for the most part, because I am trash at PvP in this game, and honestly so is my gear. But why is my gear still trash after playing for a while? Because you have to actually escape the dungeon with whatever you find in order to either sell it or be able to bring it with you into the start of your next run. Each run will last you about 15 minutes, that is unless you happen to make it to the second level of the dungeon or even further down than that, which I have only done a couple of times, and again it was with terrible gear, so I was killed by the first few enemies I found. At the end of that 15 minutes, if you haven't found an exit or a path deeper into the dungeon, you will be killed in a variety of ways depending on what dungeon you are in. When this happens, you will lose everything you had on you and whatever you brought into the dungeon. This means that if other players find you and manage to defeat you, they can also take what you have. If you don't have any backup gear in your stash, you'll have to go back to the starting gear that you can equip for free at the beginning of any run. This game is also free to play, but if you only play the free version, then you are limited to only one character. You will have to delete your character and create a new one if you want to change classes, and since the free version only has one character, it will not give you the ability to share inventory between your old characters and your new ones. However, the paid version, which costs $30 to upgrade to, allows sharing of inventory across characters. This is obviously really useful. The free version is also limited in their ability to use the marketplace, which is basically an item auction house. The free version can only purchase items from the marketplace, while the paid version has the ability to sell them as well. Originally, the free version was locked out of the marketplace altogether, but because of this, players have raised concerns about pay-to-win mechanics. The developers agreed that this gave the paid version unfair access to higher-end gear, and so it was changed so that everybody can buy, but only the paid version can sell. And this seems like a fair compromise in my opinion. I think it's a really great sign that the developers listen to the community about their concerns. I also think it's great that the developers have allowed access to essentially the entire game through a free version. You just get some extra perks if you're willing to pay the $30 to upgrade, which don't honestly really affect the core mechanics. But if you are enjoying the game and decide you want the full experience, I think $30 is worth it. They have a page on their website explaining why they chose to go the route of free-to-play with an optional upgrade for additional access to some features that add to the game but don't create a pay-to-win mechanic. I think it's a reasonable way to share the game and get people excited about playing it when they can play for free without having to worry about whether or not they will lose interest within a day or two. For now, the game has a total of 9 classes. The developer had briefly added multi-classing, but it has since been removed with plans to bring it back in the future once it's a bit more balanced. The game is mostly PvE, but when you do find another player or group of players, you can engage them, and if you are victorious, you'll be able to loot them, including whatever gear they brought with them into the dungeon. This is why it carries the game tag Hardcore. You also will have no idea most of the time what other players have on them, and in the darkness, it can sometimes be difficult to even tell what class they are. And the game is dark. And as the name suggests, it can be made even darker by extinguishing the various light sources around you. This makes it possible for you to hide if a player comes nearby. You can enter a room, shut out the lights, and wait for them to either pass by, or if you're doing well on health and gear, you can ambush them and try to take whatever they have found this run. After all, landing that first blow can often be the difference between victory and defeat. The fact that these runs last only about 15 minutes is perfect because it allows you to pick up the game and play for only a few minutes, or if you want, you can play for much longer. It also keeps those losses from feeling too devastating because even if matches can last up to 15 minutes, they are typically between 5 and 10 minutes. If you find an exit, you can leave way before that timer runs out. Like I mentioned, runs can last longer than 15 minutes if you decide to go deeper into the dungeon, but that isn't always an option depending on where you spawn in. Because of this, it's a good idea to keep backup armor for the times that you don't make it out alive. And I mean keep a bunch of backup armor because more often than not, I don't make it out. In fact, it took me a couple of hours before I even made it out for the first time. That's largely because this game doesn't hold your hand at all, and I mean not at all. There is no tutorial to speak of. You should probably familiarize yourself with the key bindings before you jump into your first match. But if you're struggling to figure things out, they do have a button that says Call a Knight, which will place you in a team with a more experienced player who has agreed to help new players learn the ropes. This is a great idea if you try out a few runs and can't figure out what to do. Or if you would just prefer to be shown how to play instead of killed by a goblin you're trying to punch in the face because you don't know how to pull out your sword yet. Also, make sure you talk to your squire under merchants. He has a variety of starting gear that you can add, and on top of that, he has some potions that you can set as your default gear, which really comes in handy if you have nothing else to heal yourself. So it's really good to know that you can change out some of that basic starting gear. For me personally, I like the trial by fire familiarization, but I understand it isn't for everyone. This game is still very much early days, so I expect eventually they will add some sort of tutorial for each class when the classes are finalized. There are still a lot of changes happening as this game is balanced and fleshed out. After all, in a full loot PvP game, it's important to not have one class running around just insta-gibbing everyone and hoovering up all the loot. And the developers have introduced some mechanics to combat some of that, such as your gear score, which will help balance things so that the gear you enter the dungeon with is considered when matching you with other players. If somebody ends up with significantly better gear in your match, it's because they found it on that run, not because they entered with epic and rare armor while you're still wearing your poor and common gear. For those who have upgraded to the full version of the game and have managed to stockpile a larger pile of gold, there are some dungeons that require an ante to enter. These give greater rewards, but obviously also carry a greater risk as you have to pony up 100 gold just to enter them. And for those who have played Dark and Darker already, gaining 100 gold isn't something that just happens in a single run, not unless you're very lucky. Those dungeons do require the paid version of the game, as I mentioned before, and those dungeons are cycled out with some other cosmetics for each season. And at this point in the video, if this game looks or sounds fun at all, I definitely recommend trying this game out. It's free to play and it's a lot of fun. Don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps my channel, and if you want to stay up to date on gaming news and developments, make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.